episode of the Beer Leaguer Podcast. It is part 2 of the How to Repair Your Hockey Equipment series, and we cover the rest of your equipment. If you have not heard part 1, I recommend going back and listening to that, but that has the rest of the equipment that is not covered here. So without further ado, here is part 2 of the Beer Leaguer Guide to repairing your own hockey equipment. All right, continuing to move on up the body with your hockey equipment. Next up is pants. So what can break on your pants? What can go wrong with your pants? What can you easily repair? And when do you have to get new ones? I have seen people with just completely destroyed hockey pants. The ones that barely stay on. Again, hockey pants, much like shin guards, if you don't feel like you need a lot of protection there, you can wear some pretty horrible ones that are not really going to help you out. You can totally get away with that. They're not really going to hinder your play if your hockey pants are bad. They will hinder the protection that they offer you. That's really about it. So that's kind of taking it into your own hands, whatever you do with them. You know, they have those zippers. Most of them have them at this point. The Gretzky zippers, whatever you want to call them. So you can be a weirdo and put your skates on first and then put your pants on second. If those break, they break. I mean, you can put new zippers on, you can sew them. If you don't use them, I never use them because I'm not a weirdo. I put my pants on first, then I put my skates on. If mine were to completely just stop working, I would just sew that whole area shut on the pants and just not have a zipper. That's a super easy thing you can sew. You can sew it yourself, like any of the ways we talked about. It is not a super critical thing. You just would want to make sure you are using a very strong thread and a strong stitch, and probably go a couple times up and down the whole length of it so it doesn't come undone. But that would be a very easy thing to do for that. You could also sew in a zipper if you were so inclined and needed to have new ones. But sewing in zippers is kind of a tricky thing to do. So I don't know if you want to do that, but that is a thing you can do as well. Have that done, and that would completely eliminate that as a problem. Other thing you can have with your pants is, you know, a lot of the hockey pants have like a belt or lace system. Most of them are just using, you know, skate laces for the lacing. That's easy to replace yourself. That's super easy if that goes. Just get an old skate lace or buy a new skate lace if you want to get a new one or one with a fun color or something like that, and replace it with that. Same thing, the belt system is usually just like a webbing material that is very easy to find and replace. You can buy that webbing material at any kind of craft store, online, something like that. Very, very easy to replace that and buy new plastic, either a D-rings that will hold it together like a belt, or the little snap connectors or whatever you have, or replace, if you don't like the one that's there, with something that's more convenient. And there are no sew only, or various configurations of those you can get as well to fix that to whatever suits how much repair you want to put into it. But if some of those things go and you don't want to replace those, or you don't think those are doing the best thing, you can do it. I do. I don't like using any of those systems. I just have suspenders. I love having my hockey pants on suspenders. I think it is way more comfortable and way nicer. And that's why if something like that breaks, just go buy hockey suspenders. I have yet to see a pair of hockey pants, and I'm sure there are ones out there though, that don't have the little buttons for holding suspenders in. I think they all do have them there for it. So if you're wondering what those little buttons are on your hockey pants because you've never used them before, they are for hockey suspenders. So I love hockey suspenders, and that completely eliminates the need to have to replace any of that stuff. Now, if you do use hockey suspenders, depending on the brand of hockey pants you have, those little buttons that hold the suspenders on are sometimes not great. And those, they don't usually break because they're metal, but what'll happen is they will pop through the fabric. Sometimes they're not in there great, but those are very easy to replace with a complete no-sew solution. I have done videos on these before, and what you can get is if you can get something to replace like denim buttons, like buttons you'd have for jeans. Those are like the easiest things to find, and those are just come in a little kit that you usually buy, and you just kind of hammer them or press them together, and they will put that little button on there, and you can use it. And those work pretty well. Or you can also get what's called a Chicago screw. That's very similar to what you have on your helmets. That is, it's a little screw, and these would have a large flat area on one side for them because they are like a button. And then the back side of what it's screwing into is going to be a metal post that has kind of a large round area behind it, and you screw into that. And some of those usually hold better. That's what I have done with my pants because those have started to break and pop through the fabric on mine. So I've replaced all of those with the Chicago screws. And I do recommend, if you are going to do that on the Chicago screws, use some Loctite. That does seem to help. What I've seen, I've also I've tried putting in a little bit of super glue, just a dab on the threads, hold that in. That also helps a little bit because those aren't made for necessarily the rigors that hockey suspenders kind of go through as they bounce around while you're playing. So a little Loctite or a little bit of super glue or something like that does definitely help. But that's a easy, no slow solution to doing that. I have a video all about that. I will link that in the notes for this episode. Which, by the way, if you want links to a bunch of the stuff that I've talked about in this products or other videos or things like that, they will be in the show notes for this that you can get always over at thebeerleaguer.com. That's the best place to go to get notes for any of these episodes and kind of see all the stuff that I'm talking about with it. Now, also with pants, other things you can have very similar to shin guards is you can get cuts in kind of the fabricy parts and have exposed padding, have padding fall out, or realize you need more padding in pants. The different brands and different levels of the hockey pants will have different amounts of padding in different areas. And maybe it's not quite, you want more padding in a certain area, less padding in another area, something like that. This is a lot of these pro stock pants. This is what they do is they will just kind of cut open. Pro stock ones usually do a much nicer job and will cut open on a seam and resew it. That's the really nice way to do it. Cut open a seam, pull out padding, put more padding in, resew that seam up, and have some nicer padding in there. Or you can also cut open an area and put more padding in if you want some more padding into something, and sew it back up, glue it back up, the various methods that we have talked about previously to do that. For me personally, with my pants, I got ones that had the padding that I liked, but I actually noticed I didn't have any tailbone padding. And last year I fell directly on my tailbone and it hurt for about 2 weeks. And so what I did is I cut open the inside of my pants right in that tailbone area because there was like no padding there, but there was, fabric covering everything. I just cut it open. I bought some a D3O foam that I talked about in somewhat of an appropriate size there. I kind of cut it a little bit to fit really nicely, popped that in there, and I sewed it back shut, and I had some nice tailbone padding in my pants now. It's a very easy thing to do. Takes a couple minutes, but that's a way you can enhance your pads, get them a little bit more customized to what you want, or if something happens and foam comes out or it's just wearing away or getting dead, it's pretty easy to repair that way. Now, if you have pants that you need to just kind of repair the outside of, or you really don't want to sew stuff in there, or maybe there's chunks missing from the outside of your pants, what do you do? Well, you could go get some sort of whatever kind of material you want, something that's going to be a little bit heavy duty. Again, something waterproof, and sew it onto the pants, sew a patch onto there. That's totally something you can do. Or another solution is you can get like patches that are made to stick onto stuff so you don't actually have to sew it. And if you're going to do that route, I would recommend getting Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex patches, they are pretty easy to find online. They come in various sizes. You can cut them to shape, whatever you need. And they're made to stick to fabric because they're made to stick to other Gore-Tex things. And because of that, they're going to stick to something like pants really well. They are going to, usually hold up better for the wetness and stuff that you get from hockey, so you don't have to worry as much about that. But if you are going to do that, I will recommend another thing, that if you do have a chunk of fabric missing, that you don't necessarily just get like a stick-on patch and put it on there to cover the whole thing up, because that will stick to the padding underneath. And then the kind of fabric that is around that will not hold on as well. So get some other piece of fabric kind of in there, and cut the patch kind of big and put it over the area, and also with that piece of fabric behind it to hold it all in there. Because if you just put the patch on, you have a big hole missing on the front of your pants. Then as you're moving and stuff, and that fabric's made to kind of twist and move, and it's not permanently attached all the way around to the padding in your pants. But if you stick it to it, it will get permanently attached in there, and that could either eventually wear out the backing on your patch, which then could cause a problem, or it could start ripping on the padding that's underneath, and you don't want that either. So just use a patch that's a decent amount larger than the hole that you have, and have kind of a sacrificial piece of any kind of fabric, honestly, underneath it. It could really be anything that you have lying around, or again, when you buy these, buy some cheapo fabric that you put underneath there and have it in there. And that will save that. And that's how you can repair outside of your pants. That's also a way, if you are someone that uses shells and a girdle, that's how you can repair some of the girdle parts on there. The shell parts, you shouldn't need to get patches like that and be that careful with it, of those. You can be, though. That is a way you can repair the shells. The shells are usually a little bit easier, especially because they come off and there's nothing behind them. So it's a lot easier if you do want to sew something into there, which is always the best way to make that connection in there, versus just using a glue or a sticky backing or something like that to sew it, and just sew like a regular patch into it of whatever type of material. But you could use those patches on a shell as well to handle that. Okay, now moving up to the next piece of equipment you have is going to be your chest protector. Again, you're going to see all these things kind of stack on to the same ideas that we've talked about. Your chest protector is going to be very similar to the other stuff you have. There's usually no kind of fabric that's out there. It's usually just something that's covering, the padding that's on there. And so there's that. So it's the same techniques we've talked about for, the girdle we talked about, or some of the same things we talked about for your shin guards, how to replace that stuff or repair that stuff if it's there, or how to add some more to it. But what the kind of wrinkle you get with your shoulder pads, also you will have the Velcro and elastic usually to hold that stuff on. Talked about how to repair that, how to fix that. If you need to replace it or update it a little bit, make it hold on to you a little bit better, is you will have usually like shoulder caps that are going to be held on with just some sort of material sewn into somewhere on the shoulder pads. It's usually just like a webbing material like you would have for handles, probably of your hockey bag or something like that. And that's just sewn on and keeping the hard plastic shoulder caps. And if you have like a little piece that goes underneath the cap and is kind of like the upper arm protector, that's usually all on one kind of piece of webbing that's then sewn into something like right above the shoulder. That's where you will see beer leaguers kind of cut that thing off if they don't want to have shoulder protection on that. So that is a route you can go to completely eliminate that whatsoever. But if you need to repair that, if you need to repair that webbing, again, that's webbing you can buy. Any fabric store will have that. You can buy it online very easily. It's usually really cheap to buy that stuff. But that is something that is kind of difficult to sew. That's not something you're really going to be able to sew unnecessarily with just a needle and thread or a regular sewing machine, because the webbing itself is kind of thick, but then also whatever you're going to sew it into is probably going to be very thick stuff. It might even be plastic, depending on how your shoulder pads are put together. So that is where something like that Speedy Stitcher really works out. That is something I've had to do. I had the whole like shoulder cap and upper arm protector came off of my shoulder pads, and I had to sew the whole thing back on. And what I wound up sewing it into which is what it originally went into, was a pretty thick seam of fabric right above the shoulder. And I did use the Speedy Stitcher for that. Worked great, and got that in. But that is a way you can repair that. That is also if you want to just take off some of that shoulder protection, or if you want to, now you're getting into kind of like customizing your stuff, cut that off and put on a different shoulder cap from another pair of pads. That's how you do it. This is what the equipment guys do. It's a lot of cutting stuff off from one version of something and sewing it into the new version. So if you kind of get the skills to do this by fixing a couple things, you can very easily start to customize your gear. It is a very small leap to getting into that. And it's easy to do. Like I said, if you don't want to get into a whole like machine setup, you can buy some of these things. I keep saying like the Speedy Stitcher, but any of these things that are kind of like the more heavy duty things for using on like denim and leather and stuff like that. They're very, very cheap to purchase. It's completely manual, but it's not hard to do. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty simple to use those. And you can use that on all of your gear to fix and repair things or start to customize stuff. You can say, hey, I wish my shoulder pads were a little bit, shaped differently. I wish they were longer. I wish they had a different type of plastic or something like that. Instead of trying to mess around with the ones you have, you could go to, a used sporting goods store, find ones that you like, buy those shoulder pads, cut them off, sew them onto your pads. That's a very easy way to do it with that. But generally, I think that's it with shoulder pads. They are pretty similar to other stuff that we've talked about. So there's not a whole lot of specific things for them and how to repair them and stuff. I know there's a lot of beer leaguers out there that don't even wear shoulder pads. So maybe you don't even care. But I think that they are great for if you fall. I feel like they help you out or somebody knocks into you, especially if you're playing at a lower level of a beer league where not everyone skates all that great. So I would keep that in mind if you're deciding whether or not to wear some, or if you're going to get ones that, you are going to cut off the shoulder caps and stuff like that. It's the way I always think of it is it's not how good you are, it's how good everybody you are playing against is. That's what you have to worry about and be concerned with. So that's how I always think of any of this for any of my gear, is not necessarily, how I think for how I play. I'm thinking about all the people that I play against and the different levels that they are and things that they can do unintentionally that I want to make sure my gear is in good shape for. And again, you can add more foam into places, take foam out of places, adjust the foam that's in there, change it out for whatever you want. If you want more or less foam or more or less bulk or protection in certain areas of shoulder pads pretty easily, just like you can with the pants and the shin guards. Not that big of a deal. All right, on to elbow pads. Elbow pads, stuff we've all talked about already. They are the simplest usually of pads that you have for things, because they're usually just a chunk of plastic and foam on one side, and then different places for strapping things on to hold them into place for you. Elbow pads, notoriously, I think for everyone, kind of universally, is the piece of equipment that shifts around and does not hold on the best of anything. So, adjusting those Velcro straps and those elastic straps that are on there might be great. Maybe you want to shorten those up even for ones that are still very stretchy. You want to shorten them up so you get a better kind of hold on them to keep them in place for stuff like that. You even add more of those. You could buy some of that elastic webbing, buy some Velcro, sew it together, or glue that part together and sew it and attach it onto different parts of your elbow pads if you wanted to have different points of attachment. So they stay on a little bit better and don't fall down or don't ride up or whatever they're doing for you. You can always add more to something like that. I suppose you could add more foam, more protection, more plastic bits if you really wanted to onto elbow pads. but usually there's not much to them. So I don't know how useful that would be or how practical that is, honestly, because usually there's not a lot of meat on there to have any place to kind of do that level of customization for them. Okay, the next one, and I think the thing that people probably think of the most for repairing their gear, your gloves. How can you fix them? What can you fix? What's worth fixing? When's it time to just get new gloves on there? Well, there's not a ton of stuff that you can repair with your gloves. There's a couple things you can. Now, if you have like kind of the outside fabric, much like we said in anything else, you can get some tape and tape that up with some heavy duty tape, and that'll kind of work. But what winds up happening with a lot of those types of things, if you do that for like kind of the outer fabric, is your gloves stretch as they do it. That's why it's fabric on there, because it has to have a little bit of stretch to it. So if you use some kind of a tape or repair like that on the outsides of your gloves, it might make it hard to, close your hand. So just be prepared. If you're going to do something like that, I'd recommend kind of having your hand closed in the glove when you put that on there. And then, kind of really, smooth it out, get it on to stick, and then take your hand out of your glove and have it go to the open position. And hopefully it still stays there. To at least have it so that way it doesn't pop off right away when you go to grab your stick. If it's just kind of stuff on the outside for like the fingers and things like that, if there's like cuts and scrapes, I mean, that happens on gloves. Where it starts to get a problem if they start to get big and the foam that's in there starts to come out. I have seen that a number of times with people, and you can just let it happen and let the foam come out and have your gloves not protect you if that's what you really want. Or that is something, if it's just like the edge of the foam, like on the edge of the fingers and stuff like that, you can tape that pretty easily up and keep that foam in there with no big deal. It's pretty easy to repair. Gloves are a lot harder to easily add protection to. What they do on the pro stock gloves, if they add protection, like add the shot blocker protection, is they will get some kind of a harder foam, whatever foam they're going to use, kind of wrap it in this similar type of material that's on the glove, and then they will sew it into usually the back of the hand, like the top of the hand there, and have that be a shot blocking protection. And that is something that you could do on your own, but it's going to be tough to kind of get stuff that matches if you care about that. It's also going to be tough to sew into these because it's hard to get into the glove very well like that. So that's going to be a lot harder for you to try and do something like that on your own versus taking it to someone that's got like the equipment for those types of things. So something like that Speedy Stitcher that I talked about will probably do that. And so I know at least like on my gloves, there's usually like a couple different flaps of protection inside. And so you want to make sure you kind of pull those out of the way, kind of almost make your gloves as inside out as possible if you're going to try and sew something onto the outside of it. So it doesn't sew those into place for it, because you don't want to have that. So you can try doing that. It's going to be kind of tricky though to do unless you are kind of more experienced with this stuff. Now, the thing that I think most people have happen with their gloves and they worry about is the palm of their gloves. Your palm wears out over time. It's a thing that happens. I have definitely noticed that if you use some of the non like hockey tape ends for your stick for doing your the butt end of your stick, so something like a butt ends or a lizard skin or any of those do seem to wear down the palms of your gloves a lot less from what I've seen. So if that's something you care about, that might be a way you might want to go that will help the longevity of your gloves out for sure. The other thing you can do with the palms, you can always send them out to get repaired. There's lots of services online that will repair your hockey gear like that, especially completely do a whole new palm for your gloves. And you can get like real nice fancy ones and really upgraded palms for them. They can be kind of pricey to do that though. So just be aware that's something that can be pretty pricey to have done. But if you got a pair of gloves that you love and you want to get that done, that's the thing you can do. Another thing, if you're just have a couple rips or tears in there, you can buy some of those Gore-Tex patches that I talked about and, just kind of stick those on. You can just stick them on and just leave them. You can stick them on and reinforce it with some stitching around it. And that will cover up rips and tears in the palm so they don't get worse to help them last longer. If you are handy with sewing, one thing that I have seen people do a number of times is if the palms of the glove are just kind of toast and there's huge gashes, huge chunks missing, the kind where you can see the palm of somebody's hand because there's no glove there, is what you do is you cut out the entire palm almost. You leave it a lip of the material around the edge there, and then go get a pair of like nice leather gloves or something similar to that. Cut the palm out of those and then sew those into the hockey glove. Something I've seen people do. Again, because of how the gloves are and getting into the fingers and everything, I don't think you're going to get a machine to do that. So it's something you would have to be comfortable with doing by hand. And it would take a while. It'd be a tedious thing to do. But again, if you have a pair of gloves that you love, that is a way you could save them and, still have some pretty good level of protection for the palm of your hand there. Then you can do it yourself. All right. Last piece at the top, your helmet. This is more so even than skates, something that I would not really try and repair. Because to me, helmet is the most important piece of gear that you wear. Because if your helmet is compromised and you hit the ice, your head hits the ice, man, that can cause some bad damage. That can be not great very easily. So that is the thing I would be the most leery about trying to repair on a helmet. I mean, you can't repair some stuff. It's not a big deal to replace like the little J clips. That's what they call the clips on the sides of your helmet that hold your visor or your cage in. That stuff's really easy to repair and replace. Any of the screws in there, very easy to buy a helmet repair kit, which is something that, you should probably have in your bag anyways, to repair any of this stuff that happens. Someone on your team should definitely have one of those because those little bits fall out from helmets from time to time. Those are very easy to replace if they rust out. I will also mention here, you should replace your helmet every so often. There is a sticker on it that is the HECC certification sticker, and your helmet does have an expiration date. If you didn't know that, I don't know if any beer leaguers really follow that. But if your helmet's like super expired by multiple years, you should probably look at getting a new one that is not. It is what that's for is for the life, kind of to talk about the life of the foams and other things that are in there that are supposed to protect you. So after it's expired, they basically are saying it's no longer doing the job it's supposed to be doing. So that's the one piece of equipment where I would be kind of concerned with that sort of thing. If anything, kind of on the outside plastic part of the helmet, the integrity of that is not doing well. If anything cracks or is broken there, just get a new helmet. Don't try and fix it. Just get a new helmet. If the places where you put the screws in, if any of those the little holes that you're trying to put the screws in that hold on your visor or your cage or something like that, you can try and glue in kind of the back end of that screw, like we were talking about. Those Chicago screws, they have like the little screw and post. You can try and glue in that post and see if that will let you get, the helmet, the screws in there to like hold in your cage, your visor, or whatever. You can also just get like a washer that will fit that little post in there that's a little bit larger, and maybe there's enough helmet plastic around that'll keep that in there to hold that better than just having, if it's cracked right around it. That is a solution you could use for something like that. But again, I would say probably just get a new helmet. If anything is cracked or broken or dented on your visor or your cage or fishbowl, whatever you have, don't try and repair it. Just get a new one. It did its job. If something like that happened, it did its job. Get a new one. It saved whatever happened to you. It saved it. Just go get a new one. Not worth it. On the inside of your helmets, you have usually they're foams. Some of the newer ones have like that 3D printed meshy material like that. sometimes that stuff can come loose from your helmet. You can glue that back in, but you have to be very, very careful with the type of glue that you use. Most glues will just eat up foam. So if it's any foam, if it's that plasticky mesh, I'm not really sure how well that sticks with stuff. But if you're going to try and glue the foam stuff back in, you have to be really careful with the type of glues that you use. Usually you need like some kind of a contact cement or like spray contact cement or something like that you spray or spread on the inside of the helmet and on the foam and hold that back in. Because otherwise, a lot of these adhesives that you would try and use on something like that is just going to eat it up and just destroy it, which completely destroys the usefulness of your helmet. And again, not worth it. But I have seen prematurely some of this stuff will just kind of come loose. And if you want that to stay in place, that is a pretty easy fix. Other stuff on there on the helmets, besides kind of the screws holding everything in, it's very easy to replace the ear loops if you keep them on your helmet. I don't get why people take those off, but they're very easy to replace. They're just screwed in there. The chin strap stuff, you can buy replacement chin straps. You can buy fancier chin straps, heavy duty chin straps, ones that have better kind of snaps than the ones that, normally come on there. No problem. You can buy all cheap versions of this stuff, fancy versions of this stuff. Because the cheap versions, which is what every helmet comes with, basically, they're only made to last a couple years. And if, like most beer leaguers, we're keeping our helmets for way longer than we're supposed to, that stuff just rusts out and then doesn't snap and doesn't work like it's supposed to, because it's usually just kind of really crappy pop metal. So you can buy like all plastic versions that will hold, the chin strap on, or that will nicely hold your fishbowl or your cage onto your helmet or something like that. You can buy nicer strapping and stuff like that, made specifically for the hockey helmet. You could make that stuff yourself. I don't think it's worth it unless you have that stuff, because it's usually very cheap just to buy some of these repair things. A lot of the nicer, a little bit larger selection helmet repair kits will come with like an extra chin strap or something like that. If not, again, super easy to find at. I think any hockey store should stock this stuff very, very, very easily. You can find it online very easily. It's also the kind of thing that you might find in some of those hockey vending machines that some of the rinks have. They might have like a helmet repair kit that's got some of that stuff in there. So you can find it and get it very, very simply to use. And again, I'm going to reiterate one last time. I really wouldn't try and repair your helmet. Anything beyond tightening the screws down or replacing those screw and posts because they are starting to rust out, or you've lost one because they've come out. Anything beyond that, I really wouldn't try and fix on your helmet. Just get a new one. All right, everybody, that covers everything I know of going from skates to helmet, of different ways you can repair your gear, when you should repair your gear, and kind of all my tips and tricks that I know of to let your gear last as long as possible and keep it as long as possible. Because like I said in the beginning, hockey is expensive. It shouldn't be more expensive. Do things to make it cheaper, but not things to make it less safe. Hope this helped a couple of you out there. If there are other gear questions you have and specific things that you're wondering if there's an easy way to repair it or an easy way to kind of work around it, I would love to hear about that. Drop me a message and let me know. How can you drop me a message? There's all kinds of different ways, all of them available at thebeerleaguer.com, which is also where you can go and get show notes, past episodes, find all the different Beer Leaguer accounts that are out there in the social media sphere with all the random stuff that I know you want to find out about what I am doing in my day-to-day hockey life. So go check that out. Show notes will have links to everything I've talked about, including other episodes, other videos, things that have to do with this, products that I've mentioned throughout this. So that is a good place to get that. Transcripts, if you need to figure out what I'm talking about and you can't understand what I'm saying, that'll be out there as well. All that good stuff at thebeerleaguer.com. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll catch you in the next one.